Greetings, human beings, and welcome to Apartment 303, a podcast for community fans. My name is Dave, and alongside our co-hosts Adam and Scott, I would like to thank all of you for joining us and for your continued support in what will somehow already be our 7th episode. If you're joining us now for the first time, welcome. Apartment 303 is still a fairly new podcast where every other Wednesday we invite you to discuss and debate all things community, attempting to delve into each and every layer of the show, what makes it work, and why we love it. So, without further ado, let me reintroduce Scott and Adam. How's it going, guys? What have you been up to since the last show?
Hey, Dave. I actually, part of what I did because I came to visit you I had gone to a wedding of a friend and happened to coincide with a visit to you and your lovely wife. And we had a pretty good time and hung out, and it was just happened to be a couple days after my birthday, so got to celebrate that as well. So it was a very nice trip. I have to do a quick shout out of just one of the best gifts I've ever been given in my life, which was a Nalgene bottle, which in and of itself is very useful, but it had been plastered with all sorts of stickers from community lore, and it was just a terrific gift, and I really, really appreciate that.
Well, I'm pissed that I wasn't invited to the wedding because I still haven't met Dave in person yet. So thanks.
It wasn't Dave's wedding.
I know, but I could have been your plus one, and we.
I didn't get a plus one. We're not that good of friends.
Oh, all right. You know, interesting enough, it was a good thing you were out of town that week because the whole entire West Coast and specifically the Pacific Northwest has been pretty smoky. And if my voice breaks today, it's partially because I'm going through puberty and also because my throat is super dry just from having to sit in it for the last week. But biggest thing that's happened for me is Friday I rewatched Armageddon with my roommates, and I had taken an edible a couple hours beforehand. And my mind was blown because I completely forgot Keith David plays like a general in that movie. And so like the community part of me was just flared up in excitement. So.
Alrighty then. The plan for today is to finish with a discussion about the classes and professors we would choose as Greendale students. To kick things off, however, we're going to start by catching up on some current events. Community has been in the news quite a lot lately, and I don't even know where to start. Scott, would you like to take the first crack at it?
Yeah, I'd love to kick things off with the announcement of Ludwig Göransson getting 2 Academy Award nominations. Just a huge achievement for someone that had such humble beginnings with the show we love. He's gone on to score things like The Mandalorian. I also believe he has a Grammy with Childish Gambino for This Is America. Just a huge accomplishment that we want to endorse, and we're just so proud.
We are, and it was the Emmy that he got last night from his work on The Mandalorian, and he'd already gotten an Oscar for doing the score for Black Panther, and then the Grammy. Excuse me. Oh, I totally messed that whole thing up, but I have it written right in front of me.
I mean, all in all, the Swedes have something to be proud of besides Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah. No, he has the Emmy, the Grammy, the Oscar. So he's just a Tony away from getting his EGOT, which is really interesting because as of yesterday, that puts him in the same class with musical mastermind Trent Reznor. So
damn.
Certainly just in this one specific context, of course, but certainly just a tremendous accolades, and it shows in his work on Community that they got the right guy, and that Dan Harmon has just a terrific eye for talent, and that whole crew did. Everywhere you look, you can't help but find someone from Community is involved in something really special.
And, you know, I just realized, like, this news came out a week or so after we did our episode on music. So
Yeah,
how
and we
about
didn't
that?
even mention Ludwig by name, and that's just a grievous oversight, of course.
On our
But
part, yeah.
that also just speaks to the quality of what is going on in the show, musically speaking. So yeah, congratulations to Ludwig. Congratulations to everyone who was nominated, but certainly as it pertains to our interest in our podcast, to the community fandom.
For sure.
A couple other things came up recently here too, and we'll pair those together. Both Joel McHale and Yvette Nicole Brown had, on separate occasions in different interviews, said that they were pretty encouraged at the likelihood of a community movie coming to fruition. Joel's exact quote was from the Jimmy Fallon show, saying, there's a good chance, I think, because on the Zoom, everyone got asked, and Donald said he would do it. And he's the busiest man in show business.
Right.
All of that, of course, contingent upon Dan Harmon writing it. And Yvette Nicole Brown actually added to that, saying it's always been about scheduling and never about desires. As soon as Dan writes it, or one of the other great writers writes it, we can all find a time in our calendar where everyone can set aside a month to do it. 100% we would do it, is what she had said.
The news, though, like, has been her saying, like, it is like 100% happening, though.
Yes.
It's like kind of been the headlining news, which is so exciting that, we went from starting this year to like it was completely speculation, to getting the table read and now this, like, these guys are doubling down on the momentum of this movie actually happening. So
yeah, and you know what, Yvette actually went on to say something else, and I want to get your perspective on this, because in the interview a little bit later on, she was asked, "Oh, well, would you do the show again? Would you record episodes of Community? Would you record season 7, basically?" And her response was, not as it was originally done, not as it was originally shot, but would be amenable to do something similar to how they did in Arrested Development, where they were just focusing on one character at a time. And I wanted to get your thought. That does take us into the area of speculation again. Would you have any interest in watching something along those lines?
my initial reaction is no. I feel a lot of resistance to that because my initial thoughts are like what makes the group is them being together. And I don't know if and like, of course there's always the A, B, and sometimes C stories that they go off on, but for the most part, they're always like grouped together. And I don't know. I have some reservations about it being done that way. What were your feelings?
I tend to agree with you. I think it would be an interesting way to start off the movie, would be to examine each person individually for a couple of minutes. I think that's a potential interesting way to start off the movie, because if you think about, that's actually where the pilot begins, shows each of them in isolation listening to the dean. So it'd be kind of a nice nod, or having the conversation go full circle in a way.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly not a season 7 done like that. I don't think would be. That's not how I would want to see the group. Again, it could also be interesting for some of the minor characters. Checking in on them individually could be kind of fun too. But again, not for a full season.
And like to your point about them being isolated and alone, that's kind of how the show ended. Them going off on their own way. But also, when you brought up the Arrested Development format, is part of the reason I also want to resist it, because I personally don't like the later seasons they're just not the same. 1 through 3 is like some of the best television out there.
Yeah, I thought it was actually an interesting. Oh, sorry to cut you off there, but I thought that was an interesting comparison, because most folks, I think, tend to agree with you that that's not the version of Arrested Development that they like.
My question to you, in the light of the movie getting some attention and me having to, I feel like I've had to defend season 6 on Twitter the last couple weeks. And
someone has to do it. I'm glad that you're taking that mantle.
Yeah. Doing God's work out there. What are your thoughts on the Frankie and Elroy and Buzz Hickey?
In terms of them showing back up in the movie?
Yeah, what would you think of, like, let's say Frankie and Elroy have like zero involvement. How would you feel about that?
I think that would be a missed opportunity to not have Elroy and Frankie. I would certainly want them involved. I think it could be really interesting. There's a fascinating vacuum left when Troy is gone that Frankie really kind of zeroes in on and tries to figure out why they like him so much. So for those two to actually meet could be a really cool component to the study group's next chapter. I'd really like that. And I just, yeah, if you're asking me if I want more or less Keith David, I'm going to tell you I want more every single time.
Keith David is getting all the attention today. I tend to agree exactly. Think about how Frankie honed in on Donald or on Troy being absent, and how that was how it left such a big hole in the group's heart. Good point.
So I guess the last thing in the news here, and this is kind of just a fun little side bit here, is that Danny Pudi had spoken, and I can't remember to whom or what publication, about his role, his brief cameo that he had in Captain America Winter Soldier. And basically he just said that Joe Russo had texted him to say, hey, do you want to be in this project, and didn't specify anything about it. Real hush-hush. And all of a sudden, Danny, on the 4th of July weekend, like he's with his family, and just, leave the parade, go to this place, meet Joe Russo, and he gets a couple sheets of dialogue to be in an Avengers movie, which is awesome. If the story ended there, that would be incredible. Yeah. But actually, Danny revealed that there is a scene that got cut that's not in the movie where he actually takes a punch from Cap.
Oh, they need to add that in. They have
I think so. This is like the Snyder cut of Justice League. We need this.
I'm going to let that one sit because I completely disagree. I don't need anything more Snyder. I don't want to be that guy.
That's fine. That's fine. It was just good to see that Abed, even though Abed, pooped his pants on the set of Cougar Town, that Danny Pudi can take a punch from an Avenger. So it's good to see he's not his character.
Yeah, yeah. The fans have to start demanding for this. I feel like
do.
We need to start a movement, not only hashtag and a movie, hashtag show.
Release the punch cut.
Release the punch cut.
I wonder if he got kick punched.
Nice. Awesome.
As I mentioned earlier in the show, we're going to take a look now at some of the professors and classes Greendale has to offer. We were talking about how we wanted to look at question of best professors, and I want to pitch it to you guys like this. If you guys were freshmen at Greendale, which courses would you be taking? Which professors would you be looking to dodge? Things of that nature.
I really like that premise, and Scott and I have done a little bit of research here. We've looked at the academic catalog, come up with a couple different classes that we might like to take, or might like to your point, might want to avoid. Some of them I might want to avoid based on the professor, but the content is actually there. So I'll start off, and we'll bounce back and forth here, Scott. Sure. I would take Spanish 101 with Senor Chang. And I say this for a couple of different reasons. Number one is because I actually own the textbook Dos Mundos and have started using it to study my Spanish. And I originally looked it up because I thought it was a prop. Dos Mundos translates literally in English to two worlds. And I thought that might have been
Thank you for the translation.
Yeah, well, hey, not everyone here speaks the language, okay? So back off, or speaks the Changwich, I suppose.
The Changwich, yeah.
So I looked it up to see, okay, are they teasing at the mock UN episode where there's Earth 1 and Earth 2? Like, that level of brilliance would not be lost on Dan Harmon in my eyes.
No, it wouldn't.
Turns out it's just a textbook, and lately I've been getting my Espanol on. So I think that would be my first 3 credits at Greendale. That's kind of the why behind it. Obviously, Senior Chang is insane, and I wonder how well I would, A, learn Spanish, or B, how well I would do in his class. But I certainly think, because he's the only Spanish teacher, that he and I would have crossed paths at one point.
One thing I want to touch on first is we started this exercise based on, there is actual Greendale Community College section on ratemyprofessors.com. And the fact that you picked Benjamin Chang's class when he has, I think, the lowest.
He is the lowest rated, yes.
Yeah, he is the lowest rated professor on that, but you just full on in, you already have the textbook. You might as well take the class.
Yeah.
Funny enough, I did take Spanish when I was at community college in Ventura, and that was our textbook.
No way it was?
Dos Mundos, yeah. I took it over the summer, and I think the only reason the teacher let me pass was because I showed up to every class, and because I don't remember a thing there. So that's no slander against the textbook, but that was my experience of taking, foreign language course in the manner of 6 weeks. Like, that's not deep learning, in my opinion. I like the exercise of picking something that you're interested in, but I think I actually picked a lot of my classes in college based on, like, is this a requirement or
sure.
And do they have a good rating on Rate My Professors? And it depends on when we look at this too, because I feel like there's a case to be made that Ian Duncan is actually a good teacher.
Yeah.
So I would probably take Intro to Psych, but if we're talking about season 1 Ian Duncan, that's probably when I would want to take it. If we're talking about the later seasons when he's like really an alcoholic, pretty much an active alcoholic, I'm not so sure. But it's a 3-credit course. Might be able to get something out of it, hopefully. Were there any comments on Benjamin Chang that stood out to you?
Yeah, I will. I'm glad you brought that up. I was actually looking it up as you were speaking there. And there's some, I'll share one good positive review and one review that was a little bit more on the negative side. The best comment that he's gotten from anyone, which says, El Tigre was the best Spanish teacher ever. He should have taught at Princeton.
Do you think he wrote that himself?
I don't think he had to. I think he got catfished into that, probably. And then one of the critical reviews was that he didn't even speak the right Changuage. So hard to argue with either of those points. His overall rating was 2.3 out of 5. So that's, again, to your point, Scott, when I was picking classes in undergrad, I would have avoided a 2.3 out of 5 professor.
Oh, yeah. Unless they had the hot pepper next to him.
Yeah, that was a thing that's definitely gone away. And,
It's,
I'm not saying it was right for me to have done that, but that's actually a good segue into one of the next classes that I would have taken, which is statistics. And certainly Jeff Winger would agree that particular professor, Slater, would have had that little chili pepper on the side there. So for me, statistics, I've always been interested in statistics, and I think there's an inherent interest as someone who's played baseball and has really loved that sport for a long time. You just appreciate all these minutia of statistics, but then taking that to a more mathematical level. So I've taken, at this point in my life, 4 or 5 different stats classes, at least 2 at the graduate level. So that's definitely a class I would have been interested to take. And for all we can tell, based on Rate My Professors, this is not a paid advertisement for them. This is free, believe it or not. But Slater actually has the best quality rating out of everyone. She's got a 4.8. And again, the only critical component of her, the only reason why she's probably not a 5 out of 5 on her professor rating is that she's always occupied with one specific student. So, yeah, that's the only knock on her. and she
Someone
talks about the
sounds-
Bernoulli distribution. So that's some of the most academically rigorous language we hear in the entire run of the show.
I'm glad you brought the higher ratings up, because there are two other teachers with higher ratings. One of them I don't actually think is a teacher at Greendale, but the other is Corey Radisson.
Oh, Mr. Rad.
Mr. Rad. The ratings speak to how awesome the fandom is, because I feel like the Glee sector would have been so driven to make sure Corey Radisson had a high rating that like they would have done what they needed to make sure like anyone that gave him a poor rating was taken down or like sought out, bullied after, just because we know like Mr. Rad was not that rad, unfortunately.
No, he wasn't. And one of the comments here for Mr. Rad is that they loved the class. He's really great. Regionals changed my life. He even got us a super cheap bus for our next trip.
Oh my God.
But again, like to your point, that really does highlight how next level these people are. These crazy
Our
fanatics.
people.
Exactly. We're among
people.
them.
I would have been sharing statistics with you, especially in my later college years when I had switched majors from secondary education with U.S. history to computer science. I would have had to take a couple. Statistics would have fit into my schedule. Intro to Psych would have fit in when I was a history major, and so would have. Go ahead.
Oh, I don't necessarily mean to cut you off, but I also had Introduction to Psychology in my schedule here, and I actually had almost gotten a minor in psychology in undergrad. I was probably only about 2 classes short, but kind of prioritized graduating in 4 years rather than pursuing a minor. So I definitely would have had content interest there. But if we're being honest, you're there to hear John Oliver speak. And that's one of my
absolutely.
favorite pastimes in real life today. So I could certainly make the case that I would want to do that at Greendale. And I'll say, too, one of my favorite classes that I actually did end up taking in undergrad was called Critical Perspectives on the Human Body. And it was one of my favorite classes. The content was good, but also because we had a visiting professor from New Zealand. And Andy Granger, if you are listening to this, you are not forgotten, my friend. Very well-taught class. But to listen to him speak was just a joy. And that's probably a terrible reason to actually take a class, but I'm not going to apologize for it. It was awesome. I enjoyed it a great deal. And fun fact is that old Andy actually knew the guys from Flight of the Conchords. They grew up in the same town.
Wow.
Definitely.
All right.
So that's 3 of my classes. Get you back up to speed here.
All right. My third class on my list is poli-sci for 2 reasons. Because the name of the professor is Professor Kligoris, which is just amazing. I would pin this as a 3-credit course.
Oh, yeah.
Professor Kligoris starred...
Or Kligoris. Either pronunciation is correct.
Either pronunciation is correct. Played by Martin Starr. He has played a lot of teacher roles, or at least like that 2 to come to mind is this role in Community, and then let's bounce back into the MCU because he plays a teacher in Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Yeah.
So there you go. Yeah, he came off as a professor that's actually passionate about the subject. He is the
Definitely.
head of the UN club.
Yeah.
Yeah, he leads the UN club, so he's passionate about the subject. And I don't know. I took a poli-sci course, and interesting enough, my teacher was totally dispassionate, didn't care about anyone in the class. And, it was a 7:30 a.m. class, but just
Sure.
no excitement, no passion for the class. And unfortunately, I didn't have a great experience with that. But would we have had that together?
We would not have had that one together. That's not on my list here, and I departed ways a little bit with one that I had to do a little bit of digging and research to figure out what it was called exactly, and I still don't know the professor's name, but this was the one class that Abed took with Britta and Annie and Shirley, it's feminist representations in media. That was from the episode where Jeff and Troy find the trampoline.
Ah,
So, like I said, I don't know the professor, but that episode where Abed also turns into RoboCop, which is really funny. And I encourage everyone to pause that at different times to see there's a lot of detail that goes into what's on his periphery and in his robo vision. But again, so feminist representation in media, I actually have published work in this discipline, and I'm not going to promote exactly what it's called. You can look it up if you want. But it examines Sports Illustrated and ESPN magazine covers as they portray femininity over like a 20 or 30 year time frame. So it was really interesting. And again, something
that's
about
your
which I'm
published
passionate.
paper?
Yeah, it is. And I guess I didn't share that with you until now. So surprise.
Surprise. Yeah, I would love to read that.
Absolutely. And so my claim to fame is that I actually have published an academic paper that references Bill Murray specifically.
Do we have time for you to break down what context that is?
He was on the cover of one of the Sports Illustrated magazines when he was golfing.
All right. Full on Caddyshack.
Yeah, full on Caddyshack indeed. So yeah, I definitely would have taken that class with the girls in Abed and would have enjoyed that.
And plus you had Hillary Duff in the class.
Hillary Duff was in the class too, sure. Mm-hmm. She would have been too mean to me though. I might have left, might have dropped that one.
I wish I would have thought of that. I kind of stuck to the script of like just looking at the Rate My Professors classes, and I
had to give you something to think about.
Yeah, you definitely did. The closest thing to that I took my freshman year at IUN, which is Indiana University Northwest. I took a African American women's literature course.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, really insightful class, and we read a couple different really interesting books. I could not name specifics off the top of my head, but I still own a few of them.
It's not a shining endorsement, Scott.
This was how many years ago? I don't want to say it out loud because that's just going to make me sad. But yeah, that's a good pick and good deep dive on the show.
And you ended up taking in the neighborhood of what is around 16 credit hours, you said?
Yeah, I put down 16. Just, if I'm going to be going to school as a full-time student, like I'm going to be trying to get all these classes done. And
yeah, you're going to go full winger on it.
Full winger on it, doubling up, making up some night classes and whatever I got to do. This next class has no bearing on anything I majored in, but he actually has a pretty good rating on Rate My Professor, so I figured why not. And it's Intro to Law with Jeff Winger. And Jeff has a shining endorsement rating of 3.8. Which I
level
feel
of difficulty is only 1.4 as well.
Oh, wow. So do you even have to show up? What do you think the baseline for his class is? Like showing up or like writing your name on like the exams?
Yeah, I think if you wanted to embody the ultimate Jeff Winger blow-off class, it ends up not being the one that doesn't exist, but it's the one that he teaches. So to that point, I think if you just occasionally emailed him, you could get a good grade in there. Yeah.
Which is perfect for me. With my 16 credit load, having that blow off class probably makes this more of like a 13 credit semester. So, I think I'm setting myself up for success. Also, as mentioned, Winger would have the pepper next to his name.
No, there's no doubt. Even his shadow.
Yeah, his shadow. What's next on your course? And what was your total? What's your total credit?
Right in the same ballpark there. Yeah, 5 classes that I would have estimated at 3 credits, and then one total blow-off class that would have probably just been 1 credit. And that's, of course, forsaking the class that Abed takes, the 2-day crash course on whether or not Nicolas Cage is a good actor. I think that should be compulsory. If you go to Greendale, you have to take that class.
That's your blow-off class that you would pick?
Either that one or the class with Coach Bogner, the Art of Pool, which is a physical education class, of course. So that probably would have been the one that was like blow off steam. I have a soft spot in my heart for those classes. Actually, when I was a teaching assistant, I taught a class on training for the 5K and training for the half marathon. So I do enjoy those life skill, physical education classes at the college level. I think everyone ought to take one. The last real class I would have taken would have been Accounting 101 for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think in a different life, I am an accountant. I may or may not be completely in love with Microsoft Excel. My happy place is spreadsheets, and I think I would have done well as an accountant. But, kind of the total dichotomy of that is that Professor Eustace Whitman taught it like
Right.
he was in Dead Poets Society. And I actually would have benefited from living a little bit more like that in undergrad rather than, the laser focus, anxiety riddled, checklist oriented undergrad that I was.
I completely think that they should have a course on like just presence and just kind of self-awareness in high school or college, and they should have things like that involved in doing like mental exercises like meditation. And I don't know, I feel like that's so undersold, and we don't talk about or look into these things until we either have like issues or wow, I'm really going off here.
You got serious. That's good. I appreciate that. And I think that Greendale already has a perfect professor who could cover that class, which would be I believe it's Professor Marion Holly. Is that the name of the teacher who Tony Hale plays in the pottery class? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did we cover Tony Hale being in the show? Because we talked about, on a previous episode, we've talked about characters from different shows or sitcoms appearing on Community. Did we even gloss over the fact that Tony Hale was on the show?
I don't believe that came up, no.
But he does play a substantially different character than Buster from Arrested Development. So that might be why. Why do you think Beginner Pottery with Marion Holly would embrace that?
Oh, I just think that he's the type of teacher who could also then teach your mindfulness class.
Oh, okay.
He refers to his students as blueberries, and I think that is a very telling sign that he's on the hippy-dippy side and could certainly handle that.
All right, so I have one more serious course, and that's Biology 101. I would have needed a science elective for actual computer science. What biology has to do with that, who the heck knows? But Marshall Kane, I feel like he was endorsed well as a serious teacher that actually cares about his subject, unlike the other riffraff teachings that go on at Greendale.
Yeah, I think you can make a very compelling case that he's the best teacher at Greendale from top to bottom, anywhere that we come across. And I think that Professor Klegoris would also be second, and a pretty distant second too, because Marshall Kane, he's very serious about biology.
Yeah, he's tied with Michelle Slater on
there you go.
on the ratings. So yeah, we have, in order, it's Corey Radisson, Ashley Parks, which I have no idea who that is.
Me neither. I couldn't even figure out with context here.
I did a Google search and I did like a community wiki search, nothing. So I don't know if that was like a prank or if there's like some hidden fandom thing I don't know about, but Corey Radisson and Ashley Parks are tied with 5.0 ratings, followed by Michelle Slater and Marshall Kane, both tied at 4.8. Martin Klegoris at 4.2, tied with Marion Holly with another 4.2. So I don't think I would have taken beginner pottery, despite your assessment that he could have taught like a mindfulness present class. I feel like I now am missing out on this semester already.
I tell you what, I took a pottery class one time and it was terrible. It's funny, the class wasn't actually terrible, but my pottery teacher also had just one rule, and it wasn't no ghosting. It was don't throw clay. And inevitably, I threw clay one day, and it was seriously the only day the entire quarter that he came out, and I apologized profusely. and I got a B minus in that class because he never forgot that I broke the one rule from his class.
So you didn't ghost anybody?
I didn't ghost anyone, no, but I nearly became a ghost because this man was notorious back in the day for getting rowdy and clearing out a bar if he felt like it. He could have torn me limb from limb if he wanted.
Damn, that's a beginner pottery professor you don't want to mess with. I would have taken marine biology, and this is me thinking back to my Ventura College days, which is on the coast and actually does have a marine next to it. So that would have been like actually useful for me, but we're talking about being, in landlocked Colorado. So, it's a good thing Troy took that course now that I think about it.
Yeah, it is. He graduated from the SS Nose Candy to the Childish Tycoon.
Yeah, there you go. I also think Lee Slaughter, is that how you pronounce it? Yeah, he came off as another teacher that doesn't have the typical Greendale shenanigans and actually is teaching a course there. The most difficult hurdle for him is to get his students to stop laughing at the word semen. So that would have been a difficult hurdle for me as
You might not have passed that class, Scott.
yeah, damn, now that I think about it. Well, that's really all I had on my schedule, which I now realize is extended to like a 18 credit schedule. But dude, I'm just so happy that we're at Greendale.
Yeah, it is, and I can't appreciate enough the community fandom for taking the time to do this and to put this in a place where people seriously look to plan their schedule and
Yeah.
paying homage more than making it a farce. It was so enjoyable. I felt like a little kid when we found this treasure trove.
Yeah.
And I appreciate both Scott and Dave for posing the question in this way. I think it was a really cool way to look at the professors of Greendale.
All right, let's leave it there for today. We would like to take this time to thank each and every one of you for tuning in and invite you to join us in our next episode, where we will be fully embracing the spirit of the season with Halloween shenanigans and the help of a very special guest, Jen, from the Community Rewatch podcast. Apartment 303 is now available on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you have any suggestions or want to collaborate, our email address is apt303pod@gmail.com. For Adam and Scott, this is Dave signing off. We will see you in episode 8.